A father offered his daughter as meat, but the alpha bowed instead of killing her. What secret inside her could make the strongest werewolf submit? Before we begin, share where you're watching from in the comments, and when the story concludes, give it a rating from 0 to 10. Ready? Let's get started. Brunna Wender had learned long ago that her father's silence was more dangerous than his shouting. Tonight, Osric moved through their cramped farmhouse like a ghost, his weathered face carved from stone, his hands trembling as he gathered rope from the barn. The crimson cord coiled in his palm like a serpent, and when his eyes finally landed on Brunna kneading bread by the dying hearth fire, something cold slithered down her spine. "Father?" Her voice cracked in the stillness. He didn't answer. He never did anymore, not since her mother died birthing a son, who followed her into the grave 3 days later. Osric blamed Brunna for surviving when they hadn't, for the weight she carried that required extra food they couldn't afford, for simply existing in a world that had taken everything beautiful from him. The bread dough stuck to Brunna's flour-dusted fingers as she watched him approach. Her heart hammered against her ribs. At 23, she'd grown used to his contempt, the way his lip curled when he looked at her soft arms and round face, how he muttered burden under his breath when she struggled with the plow. But this was different. Earlier that evening, she'd heard voices outside the barn. Osric speaking in hushed, desperate tones with someone she couldn't see. The words drifted through the rotting wood. Blood debt, the wolves, payment overdue. And then, clear as church bells, her own name. "Get up." Osric's command snapped her back to the present. "Father, what?" "I said get up." His rough hands seized her wrists, winding the red rope tight enough to bite into her flesh. Brunna cried out, stumbling as he dragged her toward the door. The autumn night swallowed them whole, frost crunching beneath their feet as Osric hauled her past the withered fields and toward the tree line. Grim-walled forest loomed ahead, a wall of ancient darkness where moonlight died among twisted branches. Stories crawled from those depths, tales of the werewolf pack that ruled the woodland shadows, led by an alpha whose name parents whispered to frighten disobedient children. Fenrir Kaleborn, the beast of Eldermore. "Please," Brunna sobbed, her legs screaming as she struggled to keep pace. "Father, please don't do this." Osric's jaw clenched. "You've been nothing but weight around my neck since the day you were born. At least now you'll serve a purpose." They crossed into the forest, swallowed by towering pines and suffocating silence. Osric stopped in a clearing where moonlight managed to pierce the canopy, pushing Brunna to her knees in the frost-slicked grass. "Fenrir Kaleborn." His voice cracked as he called into the void. "I've brought payment for my debt." As agreed. The forest held its breath. Then the shadows moved. A massive shape emerged from between the trees, white fur gleaming like fresh snow, eyes burning molten gold. The wolf stood taller than any natural beast, muscles rippling beneath his pelt as he stalked forward on silent paws. Steam curled from his nostrils in the frozen air. Brunna's breath caught. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for fangs to tear into her throat. But death didn't come. Instead, warmth ghosted across her face. The wolf circled her slowly, his breathing deep and deliberate, nostrils flaring as if drinking in her scent. When Brunna dared to open her eyes, she found the alpha mere inches away, his massive head lowered, golden gaze locked on hers with an intensity that stole her voice. Then Fenrir Kaleborn did something impossible. He bowed his head, and in a voice like thunder wrapped in silk, he whispered, "Do you feel it too?" The beast did not lunge. It circled instead, slowly, deliberately, massive paws pressing soundless prints into the blood-stained snow. Brunna's breath hitched as the creature lowered its enormous head, nostrils flaring. It was sniffing her. Her body trembled violently against the post. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but the ropes held fast, and her legs had long since given out beneath her. The wolf's eyes, molten gold, impossibly bright, fixed on her face. Then they traveled downward to her bound wrists. And something shifted. The snarl faded from its lips. Its ears, previously pinned back in aggression, twitched forward. It stepped closer, and Brunna squeezed her eyes shut, certain this was the end. But the killing blow never came. Instead, she felt warmth. A strange, pulsing heat radiating from the creature as it leaned in and pressed one clawed finger to the frayed rope at her wrists. "Lenara Bloom," it rumbled. Brunna's eyes snapped open. The voice was deep, guttural, but unmistakably words. The beast spoke. "I thought your kind extinct." Behind them, Osric stumbled backward, his face drained of color.
No.
"No, this isn't. Monsters don't speak." The wolf's head swiveled toward him with predatory precision. "Monster?" Its lips curled back, revealing rows of gleaming teeth. "You bind a daughter of the moon and call me monster?" Osric's torch clattered to the ground. "She's cursed," the elders said. The elders lied. The finality in those words made the air itself feel heavier. Osric looked from the beast to Brunna, his expression crumbling into panic. This was not the savage mauling he'd expected. This was something far worse, something he didn't understand. "I won't harm her," Fenrir said, his glowing gaze never leaving Osric. "But I do not release what is mine." Osric bolted. His footsteps crashed through the underbrush, fading into the black forest until only the wind remained. Brunna sobbed, raw, broken sounds that shook her entire frame. She was alone now. Truly alone. The wolf turned back to her, and with one swift motion, severed the ropes binding her to the post. She collapsed forward, but he caught her, gently, impossibly gently, in arms that had shifted halfway between beast and man. "Please," she whispered. "Please just kill me."
No.
He lifted her as though she weighed nothing, cradling her against a chest still covered in dark fur. His voice softened, just barely. "The world lied about you, little Bloom. But I will tell you the truth." Brunna's vision blurred with tears as the forest began to move around her. He was carrying her deeper, away from Ashvale, away from everything she had ever known, toward something hidden, toward the den. The fortress emerged from the forest like something born of stone and shadow. Massive timber beams intertwined with ancient cliffside rock, creating a structure that seemed less built than grown, organic, primal, and impossibly vast. Torches flickered along carved archways, and the scent of pine and smoke hung thick in the cold air. Brunna's breath caught as Fenrir carried her through the entrance. Werewolves lined the corridors. Dozens of them, some in full beast form, others caught between human and wolf, their eyes gleaming in the firelight. They watched her with predatory stillness, muscles coiled, lips twitching over fangs. A low growl rumbled from somewhere in the shadows. Fenrir's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Stand down." The growling ceased immediately. His presence commanded absolute obedience. Not one of them moved as he strode past, Brunna still cradled against his chest. She felt their eyes burning into her. Curious, suspicious, hungry, but none dared challenge their alpha. She expected to be thrown into a cell.
Chained.
Left to rot in darkness until whatever cruel fate he intended finally came. Instead, Fenrir brought her into a chamber warmed by a roaring hearth. He set her down gently on a pile of furs, so soft she nearly gasped. The room was sparse but clean, wooden walls carved with strange symbols, shelves lined with books and bottles, a low table near the fire. "Bring food," Fenrir ordered a young woman hovering near the doorway, half-shifted, her ears pointed and eyes amber. "And blankets. Summon Marin to tend her wounds." The woman nodded and disappeared. Brunna stared at him, trembling. "Why?" Fenrir crouched before her, his form still halfway between man and beast, broad shoulders covered in dark fur, clawed hands resting on his knees, golden eyes impossibly steady. "Why what? Why are you?" Her voice cracked. Why aren't you hurting me? His expression didn't soften, but something flickered in his gaze. Because you have been hurt enough. She shook her head, tears spilling over. I don't understand. I'm nothing.
I'm cursed.
My own father. Your father, Fenrir interrupted quietly, saw weakness where there was none. Brunna's breath hitched. You carry the Lenara bloom, he continued. A power that awakens only in those who have endured great pain. Emotional suffering so deep it fractures the soul and remakes it. I don't have any power, she whispered. I'm worthless.
No.
The single word was so firm it startled her into silence. Fenrir leaned closer, his voice low and deliberate. Your father saw weakness. I see strength. Brunna's chest tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever looked at her and seen anything but shame. A woman entered then, older, silver-streaked hair tied back, her hands steady as she knelt beside Brunna with salves and clean cloth. Let Maren tend you, Fenrir said, rising to his full, towering height.
Rest. Eat.
We will speak more when you are ready. He turned toward the door. Wait. He paused, glancing back. Brunna's voice was barely audible. What do you want from me? Fenrir's golden eyes held hers for a long moment. I want you to remember who you are. Then he was gone. The pack did not welcome her with open arms. In the days that followed, Brunna encountered them in passing, wolves who shifted mid-stride to watch her with narrowed eyes, younger members who whispered behind clawed hands, warriors who assessed her like prey. A broad-shouldered man named Halvard sneered openly. She smells like fear and weakness. She smells like potential, countered Maren, the healer, her tone sharp enough to silence him. Brunna kept her head down and tried to make herself smaller. Old habits died hard. But Fenrir had other plans. He brought her to a clearing deep within the fortress grounds, where moonlight filtered through the canopy in silver threads. Stand here, he instructed. Brunna obeyed, her hands trembling at her sides. Close your eyes. Breathe. Why? She whispered. Because I need to know if the bloom is truly awakening. She didn't understand, but she closed her eyes anyway. The cold air bit at her skin. Somewhere distant, wolves howled. Think of the moment you felt most powerless, Fenrir said quietly. Her breath caught. The memories flooded in unbidden. Her father's voice, cold and final. You're nothing. The ropes biting into her wrists. The villagers turning their backs. Pain lanced through her chest. And then light. A pulse of silver-blue energy burst from her palms, rippling outward like a shockwave. Brunna gasped and stumbled backward, eyes flying open. Fenrir stood unmoving, his golden gaze fixed on her hands. What was that? She breathed. That, he said softly, was you. That night, he told her the truth. They sat by the fire in his private chamber. She wrapped in furs, he leaning against the stone wall, his form fully human now but no less imposing. I loved someone once, Fenrir began, his voice distant. Long ago. Her name was Alara. She bore the Lenara mark. Brunna's pulse quickened. She was light incarnate.
Fierce. Kind.
She died protecting this pack from hunters who sought to destroy us.
His jaw tightened.
I led them here. I caused her death. You couldn't have known. I should have. Silence settled between them, heavy and aching. I have searched for centuries, Fenrir continued, his eyes meeting hers. For another like her. Not to replace her, never that. But because I believed perhaps destiny was offering a second chance. Brunna's throat tightened. You think I'm her?
No.
He shook his head. You are wholly yourself, Brunna. But your arrival is not coincidence. The bloom does not awaken without reason. She looked down at her hands, still faintly tingling. I don't know what I am anymore. Then we will discover it together. The next morning, Fenrir found her standing at the fortress edge, staring toward the distant hills where Ashvale lay hidden. "You may leave," he said quietly. "If you wish it, I will not stop you." Brunna turned, startled. "You're letting me go? You were never a prisoner." She looked back at the forest, then at him. Freedom had once been all she wanted, to escape her father, the village, the shame.
But now?
Now she wasn't sure what freedom even meant. "I'll stay," she whispered. Fenrir's expression shifted, something like relief, though he hid it well. "Why?" he asked. Brunna met his gaze, her voice steadier than she expected. "Because for the first time, I want to know who I am." Word traveled fast in the borderlands. Within a week, whispers had spread through every tavern and trade post. The alpha of the northern pack had claimed a human girl. Some said she was a witch, others a virgin sacrifice. A few claimed she bore a mark older than the wolves themselves. Osric heard them all, and where others saw danger, he saw opportunity. The mercenaries he'd hired were rough men, scarred, armed, and motivated by coin alone. They stood behind him now as he pounded on the fortress gates, his voice echoing through the stone corridors. "I know you have her. I want compensation." The gates opened. Fenrir stood at the center of the great hall, flanked by his pack. His golden eyes were cold, unreadable. Beside him, trembling but upright, stood Brunna. Her breath caught the moment she saw her father. Osric stepped forward, emboldened by the armed men at his back. "You took what belongs to me, Wolf. I want gold for my loss." "Your loss?" Fenrir's voice was dangerously quiet. "She was mine to sacrifice. You stole her. Now she's valuable, so pay me." Brunna's hands clenched into fists. The familiar shame threatened to drown her, but something else stirred beneath it, something hotter, sharper. "She was never yours," Fenrir said. Osric sneered. "She's fat, useless dead weight. I fed her for 18 years.
I mowed."
The words hit like a blade. Brunna's vision blurred. Her chest heaved. Every cruel word, every beating, every moment she'd been told she was nothing, it all came crashing down at once. And then she exploded. Silver blue light erupted from her hands in a blinding wave. The stone floor cracked beneath her feet. The force of it sent Osric and his mercenaries stumbling backward, shielding their eyes as the hall filled with radiant, otherworldly energy. Brunna screamed, not in pain, but in release. "Enough!" Fenrir's voice cut through the chaos. He stepped forward, placing himself between her and the others, one hand reaching back to steady her trembling form. "Breathe, Brunna. Breathe." The light flickered, pulsing wildly, but slowly, it began to dim. Osric scrambled to his feet, eyes wide with terror. "She's cursed. A demon." "She is awake," Fenrir said coldly. "Your cruelty gave birth to her power. And now you will leave before I let her finish what she started." Osric didn't need to be told twice. He bolted, his mercenaries retreating in confusion and fear. The hall fell silent. Brunna collapsed, sobbing into Fenrir's chest as he caught her effortlessly. Her whole body shook, not from cold, but from the weight of everything finally breaking open. "Your power awakens," Fenrir murmured, his voice softer now, "because your heart has carried too much pain." She clung to him, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, she saw her father's cruelty for what it truly was. Not truth.
Lies.
The soldiers came at dawn. Brunna woke to the sound of horns echoing through the valley, deep, resonant blasts that set the entire fortress on edge. Wolves shifted into battle forms, claws scraping stone as they took positions along the ramparts. She rushed to the window and froze. The forest edge was lined with steel and banners. Hundreds of men in the king's colors, crimson and gold, surrounded the perimeter, their spears gleaming in the pale morning light. Fenrir appeared at her side, his expression grim. "Stay inside." "What do they want?" You. The commander who stepped forward wore polished armor and carried himself with the arrogance of a man who believed words were as sharp as swords. Fenrir of the Northern Pack, he called out. His Majesty knows you hold a human girl captive. Release her, and we will consider this matter resolved. Fenrir's voice carried across the clearing, calm but unyielding. She is not captive. You've bewitched her, corrupted her with dark magic. I have done nothing but offer her refuge. The commander's lip curled. The king has heard rumors of power, a weapon capable of destroying entire armies. We will not allow such a threat to remain in the hands of beasts. Brunna's blood ran cold. A weapon. She pressed herself against the wall, listening as the conversation continued below. They didn't care about rescuing her. They wanted to use her, just like her father had, just like everyone always had. Fenrir returned to the hall where his pack had gathered. Warriors sharpened blades, strategists pored over maps, and the air hummed with tension. We prepare for war, Fenrir said quietly. But we do not strike first. Not unless they force our hand. Halvard slammed a fist on the table. They surround us, and you ask us to wait? I ask you to hold the line. Fenrir's golden eyes swept the room. We are not the monsters they claim we are. Brunna stepped into the hall. Every head turned. I'm going out there, she said.
No.
Fenrir's response was immediate. They came for me. I won't let you go to war because of me. They will chain you, use you. You know this. I know. Her voice trembled, but she held his gaze. But I'm tired of being a bargaining piece. I'm tired of being told what I am. She moved toward the door. Fenrir blocked her path. Brunna. Let me stand beside you, she said firmly. Not behind you. Not hidden. Beside you. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps. Or respect. He stepped aside. They walked together to the gates. The commander straightened as Brunna appeared, flanked by Fenrir and his wolves. I am Brunna of Ashvale, she called out, her voice stronger than she'd ever heard it. And I stay here by choice. The commander's eyes narrowed. You've been deceived. I've been free, she interrupted. For the first time in my life. Silence stretched across the battlefield. Finally, the commander sneered. The king will not accept this. We will return with reinforcements. He signaled his men, and slowly, the army began to withdraw. Brunna watched them go, her heart pounding. She had just declared war, and she had no idea what came next. The fortress settled into uneasy silence after the soldiers left. Brunna stood on the balcony overlooking the forest, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold. The weight of what she'd done, what she declared, pressed down on her shoulders like stone. Footsteps approached from behind. You should rest, Fenrir said quietly. I can't. She didn't turn. They'll come back. With more men, more weapons. They will. And people will die because of me. Fenrir moved to stand beside her, his presence solid and grounding. They will die because of greed, because of fear, not because of you. She finally looked at him. In the moonlight, his features were softer, more human, but his eyes still gleamed with that otherworldly gold. There's something you're not telling me, she said. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. The Lenara bloom does not awaken fully on its own. It requires a choice. Brunna's breath caught. What kind of choice? A bond, Fenrir said carefully. With another. A connection deep enough to anchor the power, to give it purpose. Her heart hammered in her chest. You mean, the night we met, I bowed to you. His voice was low, raw. Not because you were weak, but because the bloom recognized you. As my fated counterpart, the world seemed to tilt. That's not possible, Brunna whispered.
I'm nobody.
You are everything, Fenrir interrupted, turning to face her fully. The bloom does not awaken in the fragile. It chooses only those with unbreakable hearts. Tears pricked her eyes. I don't feel unbreakable, because you've been told you were broken. He stepped closer, his voice gentler now. But you survived, Brunna. You endured cruelty that would have destroyed others. And you are still standing. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that had unleashed light and power she didn't understand. I feel the bond, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I don't know what it is, but I feel it. When you're near, when you speak. She swallowed hard. But I'm afraid I'm not enough. Fenrir reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he tilted her chin up with one clawed finger, forcing her to meet his gaze. You are more than enough. The sincerity in his eyes nearly undid her. There is a ritual, he continued. The moonbind. Forbidden, ancient. It would tie us together, strengthen the bloom, unite our fates. He hesitated. But only if you choose it. Only if war forces our hand. Brunna's pulse raced. And if I choose it, what happens to me? You become who you were always meant to be. She stared at him for a long moment, her fear warring with something deeper, something that felt like hope. Finally, she nodded. If it comes to that, I'll choose it. Fenrir's expression softened. Then we face what comes. Together. They returned 3 days later. This time, there were no horns.
No warnings.
Just the thunder of hooves and the clash of steel as the king's army emerged from the forest like a tide of iron and fury. Brunna stood atop the ramparts, her heart in her throat as she watched them form ranks. Twice as many as before. Archers, cavalry, siege equipment positioned at the tree line. They mean to take you by force, Fenrir said beside her, his voice edged with barely restrained rage. I know. He began to shift, bones cracking, muscles expanding as dark fur rippled across the skin. Within moments, he stood in his full wolf form, massive and terrible, a creature of legend-made flesh. The pack held behind him, ready for war. But Brunna stepped forward.
No.
Fenrir's golden eyes snapped to her. This is my fight, she said quietly. Then louder, so the pack could hear. Let me face them. Brunna. Trust me. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he stepped aside. Brunna descended the stone steps alone, her legs trembling but her spine straight. The gates opened, and she walked into the clearing between the fortress and the army. The commander dismounted, flanked by a dozen armed soldiers. Brunna of Ashvale, he called. His Majesty offers you one final chance. Surrender willingly, and you will be treated with dignity. Resist, and we will take you by force. She stopped 10 paces away. I told you before. I stay by choice. Then you are a traitor to your own kind. My own kind abandoned me, Brunna said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. They bound me, sacrificed me, called me cursed. The commander's expression hardened. Seize her. The soldiers advanced. Brunna closed her eyes. She thought of Fenrir's words, unbreakable hearts. She thought of the pain she'd endured, the years of cruelty, the moment she'd been left to die. And she thought of the choice she'd made to stay. Her hands began to glow. Silver blue light erupted from her palms, spiraling upward into the sky like a moonlit vortex. The ground trembled. The air itself seemed to hum with ancient power. The soldiers stumbled backward, shielding their eyes as the light grew blinding. I belong to no king. Brunna's voice rang out, amplified by the energy coursing through her. I choose my fate. I choose the Alpha. The vortex expanded, a wall of radiant force that pushed the soldiers back, sending horses rearing and men scrambling for cover. The commander fell to his knees, terror etched across his face. Retreat, he shouted. Retreat. The army scattered, fleeing into the forest in disarray. The light faded. Brunna swayed, her strength draining all at once. Before she could fall, Fenrir was there, human again, catching her in his arms. "You did it," he breathed, awe and something deeper flickering in his golden eyes. She looked up at him, exhausted but smiling faintly. "Did I?" The bloom has fully awakened. Around them, the pack emerged slowly, watching her not with suspicion, but with respect. War had been avoided.
For now.
But they both knew this wasn't over. The lunar cavern lay deep beneath the fortress, carved from stone older than memory itself. Moonlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating ancient symbols etched into the walls, spirals, crescents, and markings in a language long forgotten. At the center stood a circular altar of black stone, polished smooth by centuries of sacred use. Fenrir led Brunna inside, his hand steady around hers. "Are you certain?" he asked quietly. She nodded, though her heart raced. "I am." He guided her to the altar, and then, to her shock, he knelt before her. "Fenrir." "An alpha kneels for no one," he said, his voice reverent. "But you are not just anyone. You are my equal, my fated counterpart." Tears pricked her eyes as she placed her trembling hands on his shoulders. "Then rise," she whispered, "and bind yourself to me as I bind myself to you." He stood, and together they stepped onto the altar. The ritual began the moment their hands touched. A pulse of energy rippled outward from where their palms met, and Brunna gasped as warmth flooded through her veins. Her heartbeat synced with his, two rhythms becoming one, steady and strong. The Lunara bloom ignited in her chest. Silver blue light blazed beneath her skin, spreading like fire through her body. She cried out, not in pain but in overwhelming sensation, every nerve alight, every buried emotion rising to the surface. Fenrir shifted. His wolf form emerged, massive and magnificent, but this time his fur glowed with lunar fire, white gold flames that danced across his body without burning. His eyes blazed like twin suns as he lowered his head, pressing his forehead to hers. Their energies collided. Light and shadow, moon and wolf, pain and strength. The cavern filled with radiant brilliance as their souls entwined, weaving together threads of destiny that had been waiting lifetimes to connect. Brunna felt herself changing. Her senses sharpened. She could hear the heartbeat of every wolf in the fortress above, smell the pine and snow from miles away, feel the pull of the moon like a living thing in her blood. Strength flooded her limbs, resilience settling into her bones. And Fenrir, she felt him too, his rage tempered by her compassion, his isolation soothed by her presence. The darkness that had haunted him for centuries softened. He gained what he'd lost long ago: clarity, balance, the ability to walk in daylight without pain. Together, they were whole. When the light finally faded, they stood facing each other, transformed. Brunna's eyes glowed faintly silver. Her posture was straighter, her presence radiant and unyielding. She was no longer the girl bound to a post in the snow. Fenrir, in his human form once more, looked at her with something close to reverence. "We are bound," he said softly. "Forever," she whispered. He took her hand, and together they ascended from the cavern into the world above, a world that would soon know their names. The beast who feared no man chose the girl every man rejected, and together they would change the fate of kingdoms. Did you enjoy this story? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next one.